Conversation here with Tim Willard and Jason Losey on their book called Veneer, Living Deeply in a Surface Society. Jason and Tim, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Doug.
Right on. Calling in from, now, I know you live down the road from each other in Atlanta, Georgia. Is that where you are right now, both of you in Atlanta?
Yep. I'm actually on a space station listening to you.
I like the sound of that. Well, thanks for giving up a little bit of your time here on Mother's Day. I know that each of you in the bios that was that was sent to us here at the studio. It's you talk about your wives. So I know that you have wives. Tim, your wife being enchanting, and Jason, your wife being winsome, as you say.
That's right.
So Tim, I wanted to ask why you don't think your wife is winsome.
Because I thought enchanting sounded cooler than winsome.
Oh, that's right. I'm sure you had to think about that. Well, thanks for giving your time away from your families and being able to talk about the book. It's a book
Cool.
that's newly to be released, and you're trying to raise a conversation, it seems to me, asking people, but specifically religious people, to rise above a kind of surface level of engagement in the world to something more meaningful, something more significant for them and for others. Is that do I have you right on what you're trying to do with the book?
Yeah, when we first started talking about the topic, we looked around to society and to culture, and we noticed that there was this veneer, like we call the book, that was happening, where things seemed to be inflated. So at the time when we first started on the project, there was the Enron stuff and the Tyco stuff, and then Bernie Madoff, and then, of course, housing prices were exaggerated. And we looked around and we just said, man, why does everything seem to try to project an image that doesn't exist? And so we just started playing with that idea and talking about it more and reading on it and seeking counsel. And so the idea was born, and we really wanted the project to kind of speak to people and help them see that and then see through it and see what it could be.
And so make your case for us. What is it that you're suggesting would be an alternative? I know that in the book you say, look, we have this culture of celebrity, we have this culture of consumption, and we have this culture of progress through technology. And you critique each of those, saying that's not going to be sufficient for us. What would you suggest for people and tell them in the book? What is your argument about what would be significant for people if they want to live beyond a shallow society?
I think for us, like when we were talking about discussing things while we were writing it, and even before that, it kind of came down to we saw this, like you described, the language of culture is what we call it, and like everything is kind of bathed in that, and we use that language to kind of project this false image. And it just seemed like we asked the question, like, why do we do this? Like, why do we need this language to kind of clothe ourselves in this veneer? And for us, it came back to it's this idea that we all want to be wanted and loved and known and accepted, and a lot of times that's why we're doing it. That's why we apply the veneer, so we can kind of look like the world wants us to look and be successful like it wants us to be. And for us, the antithesis of that as believers is basically saying, God really wants us to live a different way that doesn't elevate the self, that doesn't try to be someone that you're not. It's someone who can not glory necessarily, but just find confidence in the way that God made us. And we go into that in the book. We kind of call that the language of God, and that goes into love and relationships and the abiding life. But that's kind of our antidote for it.
Now, and you both know this world well. You write in the book that there's a language within our culture that wants to rise celebrity and lifestyle above all else, and then you say that through consumption there's a search for meaning, and we let ad agencies and marketers define us. And Jason, if I have it right, I think you own a marketing company.
What's up with that?
Is that right?
Yeah.
It's called Five Stone.
Yeah, pot calling the kettle black on that one, I think.
Yeah.
Healthy tension. I think that's what, I think that's why we dialed in on that particular idea, is because I see that in my profession. I see it every day. Right. And so the challenge for me is figuring out how to navigate that. I mean, we're called as Christians to work in these various segments of culture, and some of them are gonna speak a different way, and some of them are gonna have a veneer. But we're still called to that. We're called to navigate through that in a Christian manner. And so, for me, when we were talking about the project, it was very obvious that this should be something we should talk about. And it was something that I have to deal with all the time. And so,
I do it in various ways, and we have a lot of clients that do good in the world, like social justice clients and entrepreneurship clients versus, selling sweatpants to people that don't need them. So there are ways, there is a healthy tension there.
Yeah, well let me ask you about that, Jason, because I know that your company does good work, and you work with organizations that are trying to bring about social change and all. But does it really make a difference if you're in a culture in which is trying to pitch you should be someone different to have meaning? Does it matter if you're pitching sweatpants or if you're pitching social engagement? Aren't you trying to tap into the same psychological struggle that people have to have their life be more full and more rich and more meaningful than what they're currently experiencing? So does it matter what the product is when most marketers are really trying to say to someone, something in your life isn't the way you want it, you might want to try this?
Yeah, so that's a fair question, and I think you're right. Oftentimes it is treated exactly the same, whether you're selling sweatpants or clean water. And that's a huge rub and a huge issue, I think, with even companies that are doing good, quote unquote, and these social entrepreneurs, where they use the same language as the guy selling sweatpants to get you to donate. I'm picking on clean water because it's popular, right?
Yeah.
But you're using the same language and the same marketing techniques that the sweatpant guy is using to sell clean water.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem, because what ends up happening is you're marketing that stuff based off of hype and cool.
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. You're trying to transfer meaning to me as a Christian and say, hey, look at me. I donate to clean water, or I buy, cool shoes and they give them away, or whatever it is. And the same exact mentality is happening. We have a different approach at our agency with that kind of stuff, but you're right. In general, it's the same exact problem.
Yeah. So were you going to say something, Tim?
Yeah, well, and Jason, hi. We have, just in writing the book and stuff, this was actually a point of tension, not between us, but we were talking about this even during the last edits, should we include some of these organizations that are doing this and talk about them and whatever? But we know a lot. We know a lot of these people doing it or heading up the organizations, and we want to be behind them. But at the same point, there is you'd be blind to not know that they're using the same exact language.
Right.
To do good, and and that's the justification for it, right? Well, they're doing good, so let's just let it go. But I mean, you do have to ask those questions, I think, and then reevaluate it too. So,
well, and I think what you guys bring up in the book, and I think might be interesting to many listeners, is you're recognizing the fact that there's a struggle, and that people are living within that struggle, and you're inviting people to say, think through these things with us. Do I have you right on that?
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're in suburban Atlanta. If you want to see examples of this, come visit us. we navigate this every day.
Right, yeah. Well, and you're in suburban Atlanta on a commercial radio station talking about a book that people can buy. So we all get the complexities of this, right? We understand, okay, there's a few things that are kind of complex about this. One of the things I want to ask you, and we'll talk about it now and then come back after the second segment, is, but what's the alternative? Okay, let's say we shouldn't tell people, you're not meaningful if you don't earn X amount of dollars a year. But doesn't a lot of this veneer and kind of marketing and celebrity and technology and progress, isn't it really tapping into the human impulse to make things better than they are? Is the alternative to just become sort of satisfied with everything the way that it is because there's no need for things to really change? Is that the shadowy side of being less driven by a celebrity, consumeristic, progress-driven culture?
I think you're touching on a positive side of that. I think we are. I mean, there is an element in all of us that wants to make things better. I think the way we kind of discuss it more or less, and this maybe just stems from individually ourselves, and then looking at individuals and then corporations, is a lot of times the impetus for doing these things isn't necessarily just to make things better, even though that might be part of it. But it's that, what are we really we do, and you nailed it, talk about motivation and what are your thoughts as you're consuming, why am I buying this stuff, or why am I modeling myself after Brad Pitt or whatever, or I want to wear the same clothes. It's the whole idea of why, and then you have to measure that why against maybe the whys of Scripture, and what are we really called to do? Are we called to elevate the self, or are we called to elevate others? And then And then but you can still live elevating others and also working to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find success, I mean, I was just reading the other day about, Joseph. I mean, Joseph found great success with Potiphar and in Egypt, right? And he was wealthy, successful, and God put him there. And he also, he didn't use that, I guess, status that he had to elevate himself as much as he used it to do good. So it's kind of both, right?
Right. And for people who don't know that piece of the story, it's Joseph from the Old Testament who becomes...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. So he's one of the brothers of these 12 tribes in this whole narrative before the nation of Israel ends up in Egypt as slaves. And really, it's all of Joseph's success that allow him to have favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, which then leads to 400 years of slavery. Right, so it really is kind of an intriguing story. I mean, it's an interesting one to bring up when you follow the entire cycle, and that's what I think where this book might tap a nerve for people is to say, hey, maybe some of the promises that are given to us in some of our systems actually have a kind of enslaving function to them that we need to talk about. So if you guys could hang on, we'll come back here and we'll chat about this and also about the website that you put together called nveneer.com. This is Tim Willard and Jason Losey. They're the authors of a book called Veneer, Living Deeply in a Surface Society. And we'll be back here with them after the break here on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and DougPagittRadio.com.
Closer to the heart.
All Energy Solar